Hey everybody, it's me, Jennifer from I Am Somebody, and Isabel from Dear Divine Goddess. We are the co-founders of the docu-series Lost Souls Initiative, where we are taking people's stories and sharing them with the world. Stories of those who have lost their lives and those who are currently suffering and those who have already made it onto the other side, thriving as they are living. And today we have Martine. I'm going to butcher and say it the English way. Hi, Martine. And Isabel, of course, we have her as well. And so I'm just going to, I guess, jump right on in and just say, welcome, first of all. I appreciate you coming on and being willing to talk about such a vulnerable topic that a lot of people have a hard time even really talking about. So thank you for coming on. And I guess let's just start off with kind of like tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so thank you for having me here. In terms of mental health, I have three mental disorders. So I have borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder type 1, and ADHD mild form. In terms of other than mental health, I live in London, Ontario, and I enjoy playing with my pets. I have five pets.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
and I'm studying to become a counselor. So I'm doing an online program with Yorkville University for my master's.
Wonderful.
That's
Good for
awesome.
you.
Congratulations. That's wicked. How long have you
Thank-
been doing those studies for?
Just half a year in, so I have another 2-ish years to go.
Nice. That's
Good for you. How are
awesome.
you liking that?
It's really good. It's helpful. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good.
So I guess let's talk a little bit and kind of get a little background on your story per se with respect to maybe your diagnosis and just a little bit of your story background, I guess.
Okay, sure. So my first hospitalization was in 2006. And at that time, I was in Toronto and I was in grade 12. I wasn't sure what was happening with me. I couldn't sleep for weeks. And I kept thinking that Jesus was going to come back and get me, like really soon or something like that. So I wasn't concentrating in school, and the social worker told my dad to bring me to the hospital. So that was the first instance of bipolar. In terms of the ADHD, I never knew I had ADHD until the pandemic because apparently it's a mild form. So when the pandemic hit, I was way more disorganized, way more short attention span. Um, and I had no one to help me because I didn't have a roommate or a boyfriend to help me. So I was more low attention span. But when I did have roommates or family to help me, it kept me on track to concentrate on stuff. In terms of the borderline, I was at the emergency ward in Montreal because I lived 1 year in Montreal. And at that time, I was very triggered by a breakup. And so they asked me a series of questions, and they said because of my suicidal attempt, it that was like cause for concern, and all the other questions that they asked me showed I had borderline as well as the bipolar.
Do you feel like when it comes to that diagnosis, it seems like there is quite a span in between each diagnosis?
Yeah, I'm kind of all over the place when I explain, so bear with me.
No, it's all good.
Um, Part of my ADHD is hard for me to
I'm
coordinate
the
my
same way.
thoughts. So if I try to be more coherent here. 2006 was when I first got into the hospital and they diagnosed me with um, another thing. They said I had brief psychosis, and then they said I had anxiety disorder, which apparently was wrong. And later they said it was part of my bipolar and ADHD. So first they thought it was brief psychosis, then they thought it was anxiety disorder. Then in university, which was in 2007, they said it was depression, but then the antidepressants weren't working. So this other psychiatrist who was new to the university came, and I was like getting re-diagnosed for bipolar. And then I went to Montreal after university, and then I basically got into a whole bunch of crap there. And that's why they diagnosed me with borderline there. And then the pandemic hit, and then I was like suspecting I have ADHD. So I got diagnosed after, like just last year, actually, with the ADHD.
Wow. I
So
find
with
it
your
remarkable. Sorry, I just find it remarkable how, and it's not just your story, it's like my story and so many other people's stories where it's like we get diagnosed and then we were like, nope, that's not it. And then another diagnosis, nope, that's not it. And then another one, nope, that's not it. And it happens so often where it's, it's not just a diagnosis and like, oh, okay, everything's good. Like you put us on all these medications and you make us do all these treatment plans and all these things, and it's not even what we have. So I just find that there needs to be something better in place to determine what is going on for those that are struggling.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts about
That's the
that?
question that I was gonna have is like, with these diagnoses, did they have any supports put in place, any community supports put in place, like, or did they just diagnose you, give you medication, and be like, okay, here, that'll take care of it?
Toronto seems to be better at like having more resources. So in a smaller town or smaller city like London, it's not as good. So my experience with Toronto was way better. So for example, my first hospitalization, when I came out of the hospital, they provided a counselor, and that was free, and as well as the medication. And then when I was in Montreal, the Montreal healthcare system isn't too good. So unfortunately, they only had a psychiatrist check up on me once in a while, and they didn't really provide a counselor. I had to find my own. And then in London, the psychiatrist that was watching over me, he apparently got too busy, and I couldn't get a hold of him anymore. And then I found out 5 psychiatrists quit from Victoria Hospital, which is the biggest hospital in London, because of management issues. Like they didn't like the management. Maybe they were being pressured to do a lot of things. Who knows? Um, so the psychiatrist that I did see, he's still there, but you could only manage to get a one-time appointment with him. Like I can't see him anymore because I'm considered not a serious case of mental illness anymore. So when I tried to see him, I only got a one time, and I was like, how am I gonna get my meds? They're like, oh, well, you could go to the walk-in doctor or try to find a family doctor, but it's really hard to find a family doctor as well. I like been on the waiting list for a long time.
That's what is your view, your opinion on so far your journey with respect to the mental health care system and the stuff that you've had to endure with all the diagnosis and different treatments and stuff that they've set you? What's your view on it all? I know I have a view looking on in from the outside, but I was just wondering what your view was.
Oh, it's definitely confusing. Like, oh, what do I even have? Like with all these diagnosis that they said were wrong. But at this point, I'm pretty sure the borderline and bipolar and ADHD are right. But it's sad that I don't have the right supports. Like I have to find my own counselor. And so far, I've been really resourceful. I've been like finding free counselors because if they're a student counselor, like someone from my university, but they just haven't graduated yet, it's free. And I know of some paid counselors that are really good too. Like I've had to pay for counselors before, and I found it helpful. So like I now have collected a list of like what are some good places to ask. But if I was someone who just fresh like diagnosed and I'm in London and I don't know anything, like I would have been lost.
Yeah. Yeah, like it's sad that you have to put together your own list and your own of resources and to find your own counselors that you have to pay for. Like to me, that just boggles my mind. And I don't know about you guys, but that just it's hard for me to wrap my mind about
Well,
that.
my only concern too is that there's nothing put into place like long term and consistent. So
Hmm.
today you can be seeing one person and then another person, and you know, like mental health is a very vulnerable place to be, and there's huge stigma around it. So it's really hard for you to find somebody that you can trust
Hmm.
enough to work with, you know, and not being able to have somebody who you're consistently working with, like that's, you know, that's a red flag for me.
Yeah, I could tell you what exactly happened last year, which was shocking. So I just had broken up with some other boyfriend, and then I was pretty suicidal. So I walked into the ER on my own. Like I didn't like no one convinced me, hey, you should go to ER. Like I was very aware I need the ER, right? I need a psychiatrist because I didn't have one. And then when I got to the emergency department, the nurses were like, well, the psychiatrists are all busy. Do you want to come back next Wednesday? And I said, but I'm suicidal. They're like, well, they're very busy. And I started crying. And then they were like, oh my God, sorry, sorry, sorry. Only when I started crying, they were like starting to get sorry about it. And then they said, okay, you can wait. And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll wait. And then waited until about midnight. So that was like probably from 4 p.m. to midnight that I was waiting. And then the psychiatrist was like, you look very stable. You have a job. You don't need a psychiatrist. I said, but I was suicidal. Are you sure? And they're like, you look fine to me. So they sent me away and I was just mind boggled. So what I did next was I went to the walk-in doctor and I said, I need a psychiatrist. They didn't let me see like a long-term psychiatrist at the hospital. So he's like, the only thing I can offer is we'll fill out a form. You'll see the psychiatrist one time. And then I'm like, fine, I will. And then they let me see the psychiatrist one time, and then what I decided to do after that, because London sucks for looking for a psychiatrist, so I decided to email a Toronto psychiatrist, and I said the London psychiatrist isn't really doing much. Like I need to see someone more consistently. And then they said, we'll see you consistently. And it was over something like similar to Zoom. And then after about 3 to 4 months, they said, I'm going on vacation and you won't be able to see anyone else. I'm like, okay, well, at least I got to see you for a few months versus that one guy that I saw one time. So, yeah, they sent me back to the walk-in clinic and said, all your information will be at the walk-in clinic. You go to the walk-in clinic for your meds. And so that was it. Like, now I have no
That's
psychiatrist.
not okay.
No.
That is not okay.
At first I want to I want to give you I can't even talk right now. I'm just like, I want to give you props for having your own back and not giving up, for knowing that you're worth more than somebody saying that you're okay and that you look fine. You know you. And so for you to keep saying and being strong enough to be able to do that, like, I give you props for that, because that alone
Advocating for
is,
yourself.
yeah, like, just to go for the first time to ask for help, but to actually have to stand up and say, no, I really need it, that takes a really strong person. So I just want to put that out there first. And just I I always, because I've been in the psych ward and I've been sitting there waiting in the ER, waiting to see a psychiatrist because I've been suicidal or I've taken a handful of pills or whatever the case may be. And it always made me boggle my mind how long I would have to sit there and wait just to see somebody. And then for them to tell you that you're okay and that you look okay makes me go back to, like, what are we training these doctors for? Because they're not being trained to look and to really hear the person out. You don't just look at somebody and be like, oh, you look like fine, or you don't match the typical person who's suffering. That to me just shows that we need to retrain our doctors and nurses and all of those people.
Because in your case, you had the awareness to advocate for yourself and to speak out and say, look, this is what I'm going through. This is what I'm thinking or feeling, at that moment. But not a lot of people who are in crisis have the wherewithal to say, like, look, like, this is how I'm feeling and I don't want to live, or I'm, suicidal and I need help. Like, thank God you did, because a lot of people don't, and they're no longer here with us. But when somebody comes to you and says, this is what's going on, I need your help, and to be turned away, what kind of healthcare is that? They're not taking care of your wellness.
Yeah, it makes me feel like if I acted more quote unquote crazy, like if I was like screaming louder, or if I was like saying gibberish, then maybe they would say, oh yeah, you count as someone who's more mentally ill or whatnot, and you need a psychiatrist for long term. And then for me to be like, trying to stay calm, not yelling, not crying, but still inside of me, if I'm suicidal and then I'm being ignored, like, then what's the point of staying calm? Like, I thought the whole point of, self-regulation of emotions is like, try your best to like breathe, like, don't act out. But apparently, maybe if I act out, I would have gotten more help. So just because I have a job, they look at that and they're like, oh, you're stable because you have a job.
Yeah. It's the stigmas they have out there, right? On people who are suffering with mental health issues, that they all look and act a certain way, but that's not the case. We could be standing beside somebody in the grocery line, or we could be working with somebody, or, it could be our kid's teacher that is suffering. We don't know. There's no one cookie cutter picture. And I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, because a lot of people look at, well, if you're suffering, if you're living on the streets and completely, you're cutting yourself in this and that. Well, that's not always the case. May be you may have a job, you may be, doing things right, but you're feeling depressed and you're feeling suicidal, and that is real. And we have to take that seriously no matter what.
Absolutely. Do you know how many times I've had people tell me, like, oh, you got your life together, you got it all together, but I don't, because inside my anxiety has me feeling like I'm having a heart attack and I'm like 2 minutes away from going to the hospital. But people think I have it all together because we're really good, right, at regulating our outbursts and trying to bring ourselves down. And we have the awareness of our triggers. So we're trying to work through them. But just because we look okay doesn't mean that we are okay. We're suffering in silence. And that is why it's so dangerous, because mental health think, like Jennifer said, like you have to be acting crazy or living on the street or addicted to drugs. When in all reality, like 8 out of 10 people are dealing with mental health issues that aren't even being recognized because we seem normal.
We shouldn't have to wait till we're completely broken to be looked at seriously. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. It's like, what's going to happen if the next time I get a manic episode, I won't have a psychiatrist to go to. So probably I'll have to go to the ER, and then this whole cycle will start again. Because, like, I never know when I'm going to get a manic episode. That's a random thing. And just because right now I don't have a manic episode doesn't mean that it's like less serious, right?
I have a question with all the different diagnoses, because I was like that. Like I had everything under the belt been thrown at what I am and what I have. Not what I am, but what I have. Do you feel like if they would have gotten the diagnoses right earlier, sooner, without all of the maybe it's this, that your journey would have been different, that maybe things would have, you wouldn't have struggled so much?
Definitely the medication changes was like a struggle because like I think if they diagnosed me properly from the beginning, I could have gotten the right medication from the beginning instead of like giving me the antidepressants that don't work. So like on one hand, I do understand from their point of view, it's hard to diagnose if you haven't like seen me throughout the years. But on another hand, yeah, like it's confusing. Yeah.
And I think
Well,
that's
and all
it
of the
too, right? Like,
medication changes
how
are
are
for
they
good.
going to know if they're keep sending you to the one person to another person, and then people are quitting and nobody's being consistent with seeing you? And I think that's one of the things that needs to be changed with the system is we need to put more long-term things into place, because mental health is a long-term thing. It's not a short-term thing, right? It's usually somebody who's deals with it for a long time until they figure out what works best for them. And I think that that's one of the things the system has to do is put into place, is to have more long-term things where it's not just passing the buck off to the next person or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and more awareness around the medications, because you're going on and off all these different medications, and these medications are dangerous. You cannot just like cold turkey those medications. You have to be tapered off of them, and then you're having all of these side effects due to the medications because they're not the right medication for you. So it's like to have more awareness of patient care and maybe take a little more time instead of like, oh, try these, and 2 weeks later, oh no, that didn't work, try these, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
these are humans we're dealing with.
I'll have to tell you about this other thing that I just remembered I didn't tell you about it. So in 2018, I was raped and then I had a manic episode. So I went to the same exact hospital where the psychiatrist thought I didn't need a psychiatrist. And at that time, they were like, yeah, you're in a manic episode, but we have no space here. So we're going to ship you over to the nearby town, Stratford, So I was like transported from London to Stratford, and I stayed for 2 weeks over there. And it was just like the weirdest experience, but that other psychiatrist actually gave me a medication that worked better than the one in London. So it's like, okay, I guess I'm glad they didn't have space so that I could go to the other psychiatrist to get the right medication. But like, why didn't the London psychiatrist think of this new other medication? Because it wasn't working, the old one. He kept fiddling around with the doses, make it higher, make it lower, but he didn't think of switch to a totally different medication that could work. So it's kind of like a guessing game, it seems. But like thanks to this Stratford Hospital psychiatrist, which I only saw for those 2 weeks, I have the new medication now, which like makes me sleep enough that I could work. Um, but the weird part is um, recently I went to the walk-in doctor, and the walk-in doctor was trying to prescribe me something else. And they were like, "Oh, I think you should get this." And they weren't even a psychiatrist, they were a walk-in doctor. And then I was like, "Oh, no, 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 like I don't want that." So it was just confusing, you know what I mean? And like I ended up telling the walk-in doctor that I wanted my friend's medication. It almost felt like I was a doctor because I had the authority to tell him, no, I don't want that one and I want another one. And he was like, let me look it up. He looked it up on Google on his phone. And then he was like, okay, yeah, I'll give you that one. So like I knew it worked for my friend, so that's why I wanted to give it a try. And then but then the doctor wasn't recommending that one. He was recommending a different one that I had heard had many side effects. So it at that point I almost felt like I was a doctor because I was telling him what to do.
Yeah, that boggles my mind, and but I can see it happening for sure. And um I think like the whole part, that fact that you named it on the get, it's like a guessing game, but it shouldn't be a guessing game. You know what I mean? Like it should be okay. Like let's really hear what the client, like what the patient's saying to us, and let's like gather all the information instead of just saying quickly, okay, let's put a label on it and give you some medication and see if that works. And if that doesn't work, then we'll go back to the drawing board. Let's get all the information first and then do something about it. And unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And I'm guessing it's because of funding and, you know, time management and all that kind of jazz is why it doesn't work that way. But to me, none of those things trump human life. Human life trumps all of that shit. And so we need to put those things into place. That's my view anyway. I'm not sure if you, yeah, absolutely. It sounds like you've had, you know, quite a few years with the system, mental health system, and, you know, different experiences with it. What are some of the changes you've seen over the years when it comes to like the treatment and things like that, whether it's good or bad, that you'd like to share?
Definitely the lack of psychiatrists is alarming. I don't know why there's not enough, maybe like the funding, like you said, or maybe there's just not enough people who want to pursue psychiatrists as a career, who knows? But it's just lack of psychiatrists causes a lot of issues, and that's why people like me don't have a psychiatrist. So yeah, my friend passed away from suicide last year, and I feel like, I mean, like
I'm so
he
sorry.
he was in the hospital and then he came out and then he did it. So then I feel like if they could have detected the signs that he was still not well, maybe he got discharged a bit too early, or maybe they didn't provide the proper counseling for him after he got out, but it's just alarming. Yeah.
I'm gonna tell you that is what I'm going through right now. And I mean, it's fresh. Like my brother killed himself on Easter Sunday of this year,
Oh,
and he was released from the hospital at 10 to 11. And by 11:47, he was laying dead on the ground outside my mom's apartment building. So
I'm
they
so
are
sorry for your loss.
pushing people.
Yeah, they're pushing people out and saying there's no space, I think.
Yeah, but you know what? You matter. You matter. He mattered. Your friend matters.
Mm-hmm. And your
Like,
brother
we cannot
matters.
have this.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And that's why we're doing this, because we want to bring your stories forward to show how important it is for the funding. They have to start putting things in place. They have to start taking it seriously. It's not okay to say, oh, the system's broken. We all know. We know the system's broken. We've known for years. How do we change it? Where do we go from here? How do we support people who need it? Mental
Mm-hmm.
health is at a huge all-time high since COVID alone, because so many of us were isolated when we were locked down and by ourselves and just left to deal with our own thoughts and our own demise. And it's hard. And when you don't have like the support, whether it be with family or friends or whoever, like you feel alone already, and then you're not getting the support from the healthcare system that you need. It's like, where do I go? Right. And we're left to deal with it on our own. Well, at times we can't, because we're in crisis, and it's not okay.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
talk.
like,
Yeah, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry.
No,
I
go
was
ahead.
gonna say, like, for me, I'm good at reaching out to find a counselor and on my own and stuff like that. But some other people, they don't know how to do that. So then they just go to the hospital, and then if they get refused or if they get, you know, turned away for some reason, it's like, where did they go from there? They weren't handed a list of counselors or whatnot.
Yeah, and a lot of times they walk away from that thinking like they don't matter because they didn't see them, they didn't look at them seriously, they didn't, they didn't hear them. And so a lot of times you go there looking for help, even though you're feeling so down and so low, like you usually already at the point feeling like you're nothing. And then you go there and they just turn you around, turn you away like you're nothing. And it just
Yeah.
adds up and adds up. And I don't think people realize that. And I know you talked about like some of the changes you've seen over the years, like, less psychiatrists and stuff. And I think I totally am with you on that. And for me, what I've noticed too is back like when I was younger, like I was able to see psychiatrists in that, and I didn't have to pay for any of that. My parents didn't pay for any of that. And we weren't rich. We had no money. It was all hip in that. But now it's a lot harder for people after talking with people, how much harder it is to get someone just to talk to. I was lucky back then. I was able to get in and see somebody in that and talk to somebody. Whether it helped or not is a whole other story, but I was able to at least tell my story and talk to somebody. And I find that that step alone right now seems to be nearly impossible for people. And so, with that being said, what are some of the changes you would like to see happen? Like, what would your ideal system look like if you could have one today?
Yeah, in a perfect world,
Yeah.
what would you need?
I think there should be more psychiatrists available in the hospital as well as outside the hospital. Like, what if I don't want to go to the hospital, but I need to see a psychiatrist? I should be able to access one with OHIP, not needing to think, oh, I need to just pay my way. Like, I've heard of some people, they want an ADHD diagnosis and they have to pay a large
Mhm.
fee. Um, Definitely like that psychiatrist who turned me away. if he was gonna turn me away, the very least he could do would be hand me a list of counselors in the area, or like help me set up an appointment with the counselor in the area, because like the fact that I was suicidal and I was just told to leave without any resources handed to me, like that was the least that he could do. Like if I
Or
was, yeah, go
hand
on.
pick a counselor that would work with you and that they feel would be a good match for you, right? Because, like I said before, it's a vulnerable place to be. You have to build that trusting relationship. So when your psychiatrist says, oh, okay, I can no longer see you, and not only are they giving you to somebody that they're like, okay, I feel like this doctor, whatever, would be a good fit for you, they're not even giving you outreach programs or anything, like anything that you can use. And it's like, it's not okay.
Yeah, I think that there should be more media raising awareness too. This summer, I'm hoping to do a few just quick videos to put up on social media to raise awareness for mental health, because I think a lot of people, they are scared to reach out for help too. So I think the media needs to like be more proactive in, info about mental health services. Like, when do you watch TV and see an advertisement about a counselor? Like, rarely, right?
No,
So,
you see it about medication, right? Like get on
Yeah.
medication and, but we don't, that's the only time I ever really hear about mental health on TV is when it has to do with
Could
medication,
you
nothing else.
forward that to us when you send it out and when you're getting ready to like post everything? Will you forward
yeah.
that to us so that we can also share it on our platforms as well?
Mhm.
Wonderful.
I would love to ask, like, what would you say to somebody who, because you seem to be able to advocate for yourself and not really take anybody's shit when they tell you no. So, what would you say to those people out there that are suffering right now, but don't have the strength or somebody behind them to advocate for them? What would you say to them?
I would say, like, you're worth it to advocate for yourself. Like, you're worth it to get the help you need, and don't be afraid to reach out for help, because like thanks to my counselors, I've actually been able to function quite well with my daily life now. Like, without a counselor, I'm different. I know I am different. So I think sometimes people are afraid to just take that first step. But yeah, I think that whoever is lost or in need or struggling in crisis, yeah, just reach out to someone that you know. If you don't want to reach out to a counselor, reach out to someone that you know, and then go with them to make an appointment with a counselor or with a doctor if that's what you need.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, because I think people need to know too, right? That like mental health is not the end. Like, your mental health diagnosis is not the end. You can still be successful and live a thriving life with mental health, like with mental illness. Like the
Mm-hmm.
diagnosis is not the end all be all. Like you can still thrive in life and be successful and do all of the wonderful things that we want to do and achieve all of the things that we want to achieve with mental illness. We just have to get a hold of it, right? And,
I
be
think
able
you
to
bring
know
up a
when we're triggered.
I think you bring up a good point. Like mental, we are not our diagnosis, right? And I think a lot of people, once they hear, you have ADHD or you have depression or you have borderline or whatever the diagnosis is, a lot of times they take on the role as if that means that's who they are, instead of really going, okay, this is something I have or this is something I'm dealing with, but I still have a whole life out there. And it looks like to me like we've all done it. We've all said, okay, we might have a diagnosis of this, but we're going to still live our life. I'm going to go to school. I'm going to get a job. I'm going to, get a boyfriend and do all that. So how is that possible? I guess, because I know people are going to ask that, like, how is it possible? Right now, I'm struggling. I feel like I have nobody. I feel like I'm not going to be able to have a job or go to school. What would you say to those people who are feeling like it's not possible right now? Like, how is it possible?
There was a point in time where I couldn't work because of my mental health. So it's possible that you are going through different phases in life where at one point maybe you can't work, but once you reach out and get the right medication, which might be taking some time because of the stupid trial and error thing, but if you keep at it and you're determined to get better, then you could end up getting the right medication and then being able to at least work part-time or volunteer if you can't work, like something purposeful in your life. So like right now, I'm able to work full-time, but thanks only to the medication and to the counselors. So I would say it's possible, yeah, like both of you said, to have a thriving life, but maybe during some phases in your life, you might need to have more rest and not work and not worry about school or whatnot. So there might be some times where the mental health is worse and you need more time. And then there will be other days where your mental health is better and then you maybe can do other things that you want to do.
So
I love
just
that.
giving
It's like
yourself grace to ebb and flow,
yeah, giving your
right? Just
permission
giving
and saying
yourself
it's
the grace.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Letting yourself know, like, it's okay if, when you are struggling, and it's okay when you're not. And it's going to change. And that's the beauty of it. You aren't always going to feel like shit. You're not always going to feel depressed. You're not always going to feel like anxious. There is another side that you're going to feel. You just have to find your why and find, what works for you, whether it's medication, counselor, or whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to take
Definite
up too
support.
much time because it's about 45 minutes, whatever. But I guess I just want to kind of end with a couple things. First, is there anything that you want to share or say or ask before we sign off?
Thanks for having me today. I think, yeah, more awareness and more of this type of thing needs to be done. And hopefully, this type of interview reaches the higher up people, like politicians, let's say, or decision makers in the healthcare field, because yeah, we could talk about and raise awareness, but we want changes too, right? So hopefully we can convince the higher up, like politicians, that we need the funding.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to extend so much love and gratitude. I know this cannot be easy to be in such a vulnerable place, but your story needs to be heard because you matter and you signify so many of us. Like,
Thank
I am you, you are me. You know what I mean? So your voice matters and it needs to be heard. And I just want to thank you for trusting us to be vulnerable with us today.
Yeah,
thank you.
absolutely. And never, if you ever need anything of that, you can reach out to either one of us. We will always, be there and be
Absolutely.
in your corner, and just, remember you're worth it, and remember to always have your back like you've been having, because that right there will take you miles away. Like,
Yeah.
strength is, and for so long people have been struggling and people have been suffering, and for so long people haven't been talking about it, or they go to talk about it and they're told to shut up, and we're not shutting up this time. We're just going to keep on talking. We're going to keep on talking louder. So yeah, and that being said, Isabel's hosting a memorial walk, Say His Name, in honor of her brother for his birthday on Sunday, August 13th at 11 a.m. We're going to be starting at St. Joseph's Hospital, the emergency room on James Street in Hamilton, and we're going to end in the front steps of City Hall, where we'll be celebrating with all those to remember those that we've lost, for those people who are still here fighting the fight. So join us for pizza, cupcakes, treats, and all that kind of jazz on Sunday, August 13th. Martine, you're obviously invited. Everybody who's listening is also invited as well. So I just want to put that out there before I sign off and say again, thank you to both of you for being here, and thank you for sharing your story and putting yourself out there. And I know this just touches like the brief little bit of your story, and this just touches a little bit of who you are, and there's so much more to you and your story, and hopefully we'll be able to touch base and hear more about it later.
Just know that your strength in advocating for yourself is inspiring. It really is inspiring.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, guys.
Have
Bye.
a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Bye.